Hello everyone. I'm not sure if you watched the Liberal leadership debate, but I certainly did. It's clear that Mark Carney is emerging as the front runner. If he wins the leadership, Carney could effectively become our next prime minister without the need for a nationwide vote.
So our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump. That's why we need big changes. That's the reason I'm here.
The fate of Canada could rest in the hands of just 400,000 people. Carney has even mentioned being prepared to use emergency powers to push forward green energy projects. And given the chaos the last time Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, it raises serious questions about what that could mean for our country.
And something that my government is going to do is to use all of the powers of the federal government, including the emergency powers of the federal government, to accelerate the major projects that we need in order to build this economy and take on the Americans.
To delve deeper into the current political landscape, I sat down with Éric Duhem, leader of the Quebec Conservative Party.
We all agree on Hamas, on a two-state
No, we don't agree with
solution.
Hamas. No, we're against
yes,
Hamas,
we're all against
absolutely.
Hamas, we are. And we're in favor of a two-state solution.
So last night we had the French debate for the leadership race, and I want to have a little bit your point of view. What did you notice, or what maybe like you didn't like or liked?
The first thing I noticed last night during the Liberal leadership debate is the fact that Mark Carney does not speak French very well. He's going to become probably the least bilingual prime minister in our history, like as far as I'm concerned, in terms of since we're born. So I was very surprised because usually, you know, he's scripted, he's reading sheets when he's doing speeches, so it doesn't show that he doesn't speak French. But last night it was quite obvious. We had a hard time to understand what he was saying. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you have to be very naive to believe them right now. Obviously, they were very unpopular under Justin Trudeau, and now they're trying to switch their speech to the right. And the same people who were promoting the carbon tax, who were promoting the capital gains tax, who were giving us the worst deficit in Canada's history, who were spending like there's no tomorrow. Well, the same people are telling us today that they're going to fix the problem, that they're against the carbon tax, that they're against the capital gains tax, that they're against deficits, that they're against spending like crazy. Well, I'm sorry, but where were you over the last few years? One was advising the prime minister as an economic advisor and on the environment, and the other one was the finance minister. So it's kind of weird to see how those people are able to say everything and its opposite. And hopefully people are not that naive and are not going to believe that they could fix the problem that they do represent and they did give us.
One thing that we saw, and it's actually the mirror from the Liberal Party of Quebec, it's two candidates was actually removed from the race, Ruby Dalla and Arya Chandra, and in Quebec it was Denis Coderre. But I want to have your thought on the fact that the Liberal Party at the federal and provincial level just failed to just kick out a candidate when they just failed for it.
What I'm concerned about regarding the candidates that were rejected at the federal and the provincial level of the Liberals is that the party is not giving the reason why. And, you know, it could happen that they're kicked out for all sorts of reasons, but they're giving no details. And that's very scary because it means that you can kick out anyone you want without any details, and it could be right or not, and we will never know. And that's very unfortunate. I think that if the candidate meets all the requirements, well, they should be candidate. And if they're not candidate, you better have a good reason. You cannot just say that they don't respect certain rules without giving any details. It doesn't make any sense.
We saw that the Conservative Party and the Bloc Québécois was actually gaining some seats for a potential election. But what we saw is Mark Carney came into the race, and now we are seeing a really agreeable coverage from the mainstream media here at home.
There's two things that we're noticing on the federal scene right now in Quebec. The first one is, yes, the fresh factor, I would call it, of Mark Carney, you know, the new face in the race, and it's giving him an upswing in the polls. I don't think it's going to last. It reminds me of Kim Campbell or lately of Kamala Harris. I think it's just the fact that they're new, they're fresh, but people are going to figure out in a few weeks that it's the same old people, the same old liberals behind Mark Carney, and the same old ideas. The second thing that we're noticing that is probably more important in the long run is that support for separation in Quebec is going down the drain. And there's a good reason why. With the tariffs, the threat of the tariffs right now on Canada, Quebecers feel that they're much closer to English Canada, that we're allies, we're not enemies. And, you know, the sovereigntists are going down in the polls. The sovereignty is now at 29%. It's the lowest in years, at least a decade. And I think there's a link with that. And it's stupid also, but even the hockey game, you know, there's kind of a new nationalism, Canadian nationalism coming up, and Quebec is part of it as well. And I think that for the Parti Québécois and the Bloc Québécois, it could mean that they're going to lose support and lose momentum over the next few months.
We are seeing like more Quebecers, by example, they want to build pipelines. They want to contribute. They want to work with the other province to be able to reach the goal to be independent from the U.S. But the thing is, Mr. Legault is continue to say that he needs social acceptability. And I thought about you because you're pro-pipeline.
Yes, but well, there's already social acceptability in Quebec. There's always been. It's the same with LNG Quebec in the Saguenay region, an investment of $14 billion for liquefied natural gas coming from the west. And there's always been a strong majority in the region in favor of it, and the CAQ withdrew its support. For the pipelines now, it's over 70% of Quebecers that agree that we should have a pipeline that comes from the west, because currently 100% of the oil and gas that we consume in Quebec is coming from or via the USA. So it's, you know, it's like half and half in terms of natural gas and oil from, you know, the West and US, but everything has to transit via the United States. So we're very dependent on the Americans right now. And in terms of energy, it's so strategic. No matter who's at the White House, it doesn't matter. As an independent country, we should be sustainable in terms of energy. And it's very important to be autonomous. And I think that Quebecers were reminded the hard way over the last few months that we should be autonomous in terms of energy. You know, autonomy is not having a referendum to have a Quebec flag at the United Nations. It's first and foremost to control your own natural resources. We have the chance in Canada to have a lot of resources, and we should exploit them and be autonomous. And that's a huge reminder with the crisis that we're going through right now.
My last question is, of course, Canada is sitting on a huge quantity of natural resources, critical mineral also. But Mark Carney is an advocate for net zero, is pro-carbon tax. But recently he said that he's ready to use the emergency power to build green energy project. And I want to hear from you because in the past it was questioned at the House of Commons during one of the committee about if he was behind or if he did support the decision of Trudeau to stop the project of Trans-Canadian Pipeline.
Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway Pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway Pipeline.
Do you support it?
Given both environmental and commercial reasons.
Do you support it?
I think it was sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
Well, our political class, the left especially in Canada, is very hypocritical in terms of natural resources, because with such speeches, what they mean is that we should export our pollution and that we should be greener than green. We should import everything that is not good for the environment, and we should ask the others to pollute their environment so we can have a good record and say, look how good we are. It's a facade, and it's very hypocritical. And I think that Canada is able, because of our technology, because of our know-how, because of our, our political willingness, we're able to do those things much cleaner than elsewhere. For example, as for aluminium, because we're talking a lot about it right now, because Quebec is a huge producer of aluminium, and we export. We're the main exporter for the U.S. market. Well, Quebec produces, in terms of environment, the quantity of pollution is 7 to 8 times lower than if aluminium is coming from China, for example, or from many countries in Africa. So we're already greener. I'm not saying that aluminium is green. I'm just telling you that it's 7 or 8 times greener to do it in Canada than elsewhere in the world. And so when people are saying we should do even more, what it means is that we're going to tax them even more, and we're not going to be able to keep producing aluminium in Quebec or in Canada, and we'll have to do it elsewhere where it's 7 and 8 times worse for the environment. And so that's what we need to realize when people are pushing for more legislation in terms of environment. Sometimes it could backfire and have the exact opposite effect than what they're looking for.
Do you believe that we should increase the threshold to be able to invoke the emergency power?
Well, Alberta has done a great job with the Manning Commission to make sure we have a framework for what is an emergency and what's not. And I think we should look at what's been done by Albertans on that issue, and it should give us a model for the rest of the country.
Don't forget to go over calltheelection.ca. This petition is actually to request an election right now. So now Canadians are being taken into a stage by what is going on right now with the leadership race, but you want an election. And I invite you to sign the petition that we have at this website, calltheelection.ca.